So I guess we're going to introduce our panelists who are absolutely the most amazing co-workers I've ever had, except the one on the red shirt. He's annoying as hell. So let's begin. So I'm going to pass the mic to Matt Montfort.
Sure. My name is Matt Montfort. I'm currently a producer on World of Tanks for console. For most of the product cycle for Xbox 360, I was a senior gameplay designer there. But since working on Xbox One, mostly in a producer capacity, so you can save all your hard answers for me. You might get a variation of soon, but it'll be a much longer variation. My gamer tag's WGMad if you want to get in touch with me on Xbox One. I've been in the industry for about 9 years. I started at Activision working on Guitar Hero and Tony Hawk. Came to Chicago about 5 years ago. Been with Wargaming for about as long as we've been around, so about 2 years. And I've been enjoying it ever since. It's been kind of a great game to work on because even before it was a possibility for us to work on it, I was playing it during lunches in the office while we were working on our other games. So it's been kind of a dream come true to work on a game that I legitimately enjoy. And some of my favorite features that I had to do with the game was the introduction of ribbons and kind of pioneering that feature for World of Tanks. It's something that other games within Wargaming have taken and kind of made their own. For instance, Warships, it's a huge addition for them, and Tanks is going to get it over the next few months. So it's a great kind of reward to kind of prove that what you're doing through the match is a good thing, and you can compare your achievements to other players. And I've also had a lot to do with the HUD. You can blame me for Bounce Gate, which was actually a mistake and should never have gotten into the game, which was above your player tag. If you bounced off a target, it would appear in these words, it would say bounce. And everyone thought that we decreased the penetration rate, but that wasn't actually the case. It was purely just the feedback was there for you to know that you missed and bounced off. So we reduced that feedback and made it a little bit less, or a little bit more subtle, but totally like a mistake when my producer came over and was like, "How did this get in?" And I'm like, "I have no idea." But we kind of rolled with it and made it something that I think is a little bit more informative.
Thank you, Matt. And I do have to thank you because those ribbons do give me a sense of validation of that I'm doing damage, and it does help in the game a lot. So now we're going to move to Leo Flores, which, by the way, if you ever encountered him in World of Tanks Xbox, he is a killer beast. He has the most winning rates in the whole studio, and his player count is insane, so I just don't like playing with him at all.
Hi, my name is Leo Flores. I'm a game designer at Wargaming. I've been in the industry for 11 years. I started a long, long time ago at a company called Day One Studios working on a game called Megasalt 2. Over the years, I stayed there, and we eventually got acquired by Wargaming. My screen name is WG Plague. You might see me in the game from now and then or on one of the streams. What I enjoy doing most is creating a lot of custom tanks. One of the first I got to do was the T-34-88. I've worked on almost all of the custom tanks, and I work on every tank in the game. So if you've played it or used it, I have worked on it. My favorite tank in the game right now, or out of all the tanks, is the T-110E5. I tend to like heavy tanks, and it's a very well-balanced tank that's good for scrapping close or being real selective at range. It's very agile, and I have a lot of heavy tanks, and I have a lot of tier 10s. So having an IS-7 and IS-4, T-110E3, M48, I have almost everything. So when I say the T-110E5 is good, it's a great tank. A couple things to note that are interesting is I've been in almost every single tutorial video, every single marketing video. If you've seen any of the videos where tanks are moving on screen, I've probably been part of it, and I just enjoy working at Wargaming. And oh yes, I was also at the fun drive a tank thing. I was hanging in the commander's hatch and watching Andy almost get run over. So.
If your tank gets nerfed, it's his fault. He's the guy that tweaks all the little bit in numbers.
And make them better.
You're going to have people waiting for you outside, so.
I know all the exits.
Thanks, Leo. Now we're going to move to Richie, who's one of the most talented persons I know.
Thank you. My name is Richie Burnell. I am an environment artist at Wargaming. I've been in the industry for just a little over 15 years now. I've been part of the Wargaming family for just about 2.5 years. Let's see. Like I said, I'm an environment artist, and some of my favorite contributions to the game have been just like getting the maps onto the 360 originally, getting everything in there and up and running. And outside of that, one of my other favorite contributions was getting the ball rolling on the war variant maps. Andy showed that a little earlier during his presentation. So that was one of the really cool things I felt like, what could we do on the consoles that could be unique and give the environment some personality that wasn't previously seen on the PC. So I was really happy about that one. Favorite tanks on my side, I kind of lean more towards the tank destroyers. I can't say I'm all that good at playing with them, but they are my favorites. In terms of favorite specific tank, I'd have to say the Tier 8 T-28 American. Like, I was kind of going back and forth, and then I realized that that's the one I played with the most. As for gamer tags, I'm not sure if I mentioned it. Send me an invite. My gamer tag is Richie11PM, so don't be a stranger. And in terms of fun facts or interesting info, I do still get carded for rated R movies, and I could also run the 40 in 4.4 seconds. But I'm sorry, I cannot run the 40 in 4.4 seconds, so I'm also lying. So.
Thanks for the honesty there, Richie.
But I am a 2-time All-American, so.
And next we have Nick. A funny fact though, Nick and I used to work at another game studio, and he used to be my boss. But now I can tell him, you're not the boss of me now.
And you left that company to get away from me.
Oh yeah, I was like, I can't stand this guy. I'm getting the hell out of here.
Hey everyone, I'm Nick Guida. I am a technical designer at Wargaming. A technical designer is a game designer that knows just enough to get themselves into trouble. I've been in the industry for 6 years. I started off working on Tony Hawk games, and then I did some design work on Man of Steel and like some mobile games. And about 2 years ago, I jumped ship over to Wargaming, and I've been living the dream ever since. My gamer tag is WGN Guida. I'm on the game all the time, maybe too much. So hop on the game, friend me, whatever. And some of the things I contributed to the game, I worked on a lot of stuff like the HUD. I worked on even the force feedback when you roll over rocks and roots on the ground and you feel like your controller shake. I did that. But some of the features I'm most happy with is the, strangely enough, the tank filters system in the garage. That might not seem like a big feature, but I think it's something that a lot of players were requesting, and it went in really quickly and went in really easily, and I think it improves everyone's experience. It used to be if you had a couple dozen tanks, you had to like scroll through your garage very slowly, you know. It's through the magic of programming. You don't have to do that anymore. I also created the Tank Attack minigame that we included in the game to keep people distracted while the game downloads. A fun fact about that is it used to be a game about killer crabs or killer crayfish attacking your tank. If you are a World of Tanks PC player, you might remember it. And that's a very special time in my life. To commemorate that, I have a plush crayfish on my desk. My favorite tank in the game is the TOG 2. It's just the best tank. It really is the best tank. It's not pretty and it's not fast, but it gets the job done. It can take a lot of punishment and it can do a lot of punishment. It's a great tank. Leo recently turned me on to the 121 Tier 10 Chinese medium tank. It's a really strong gun for that line, and I like it a lot as well. So, TOG 2 and 121, good tanks.
Well, Nick provided that image that's up there, but I'm wondering what the hell happened for that tank to even get in there. I want to know, but then I don't want to know.
Airdrop.
Well, oh yeah, we definitely want to share. I want you to share your personal war stories. I think for developers, it's all about work, 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 work. But when we get to test the game and play it and create and, these within the studio matches, it gets kind of vicious. So, Leo, do you have anything to share since this image is yours?
All right, so
Tell us about this, Leo.
I'll go over this one. A lot of people say it's impossible to make a lot of silver in games. I tend to favor the IS6 because it gets me the most money in a very short period of time. So on average, I can make about 100 to 180,000 a game. Well, in this one, I don't know if you've all remember the previous ops. I think it was a couple months ago, where it was a stacked system. So first battle you got ×2, the next battle you got ×3, and then it went 3 to 4 to 5. Well, this was my my ×5, and obviously you can see I did okay. Yeah, it's a great tank, and I ended up cleaning house in this game, and my base, as you can see, there's no ×2 on the 4600 experience. So my base XP at the end of the match was 2,399. So if you have any idea how hard it is just to get 2,000, that was very difficult, but the timing was just right. So it was very profitable. But it's not my best or craziest story, but it's definitely one of the fun ones because there's so many battles that you want to record and save them. And most of them were before we had the DVR functionality on Xbox One. So you got to take pictures and save them.
After Leo sent that picture around to the office, that's why we don't do those ops that kind of combine their multipliers on each other anymore.
Yeah, it's because of Leo you guys don't have that anymore.
Hey.
I'm telling you, there are going to be a lot of people waiting for you outside.
All the exits.
As you may know, World of Tanks consoles do offer a lot of very unique features in game that maybe not a lot of versions of the game has, but the studio has worked and people in here have worked very, very hard to bring war variants, weather, day variant maps, and special tanks like the Freedom. So, Richie, what can you tell us about that?
Well, the console versions, there's a lot of stuff that was added exclusively for consoles. From an environment side, one of the things I was really proud of that we did as a team was when we added Pack Island. It was our first completely unique map to the consoles, and I was just like, I was really happy with the way it went. I was really happy with the way it was received, and to see it go from the Xbox 360 and now onto the Xbox One, where it just looks like absolutely gorgeous. It's just like, I don't know, you kind of feel like a proud parent and just kind of seeing that stuff go out there in the world. Andy touched on some of the stuff earlier in terms of just the updating stuff for going from the Xbox 360 to the Xbox One. But, you look at the artworks, whether it's the tanks or the props, and a lot of this stuff, it isn't like we just said, hey, throw on a higher res texture. A lot of the assets, whether it's the props, buildings, tanks, the trees, the bushes, were completely remodeled and textured, given new shaders just for the Xbox One. Another feature that I like personally that wasn't really art related was, I think Matt, you mentioned it earlier, the ribbons. As a console player, I thought that just added this new layer of experience to the game. So.
Yeah, anytime we make something in the office that's unique to our series of titles, whether it be ribbons or the weather variants or entirely new maps like Pacific Island, we take a lot of pride in that, and it's great when we see the players respond well to that. It's great when we see some of the PC players lamenting that something we did they didn't get. There's a there's a friendly rivalry between all the different wargaming groups, and we're always trying to kind of one-up each other in a very friendly manner. But there is some competition, I'd say.
We get a lot of questions why PC has friendly fire and why the console version doesn't, and it's mostly as a result of one of our FX artists always shooting their teammate every time we did company play tests. So there was one day where we just turned it off, and he just started raging and yelling, "Why can't I hurt you again?" So we figured that if he's our typical 360 console player, it was better off to leave friendly fire off.
when I first started at the company and participated in my first company or office play test, the game starts and I'm rolling out, and like 5 seconds in, I'm like, who the heck is shooting at me? And I turn around, it's like, why is my teammate shooting at me? And like Matt said, it was one of our VFX artists, and it was explained to me that that's what he does. So yeah.
He's a jerk.
You had it easy because I remember playing one of those matches and silly me, I did not load enough ammo, so I ran out. So all he did is push my tank off the cliff. I'm like, oh, great. It's, seeing your demise in slow motion because you really can't do anything about it. I'm like, and there I go. Ooh, this was a really good one. One of the exclusives, I already hear it in the audience. Those who got to play in Moon River, that was an exclusive for World Tanks console, and we're talking about the lunar tank. And I want to know exactly from you guys where it all began, because that is a very uniquely feature.
So it was around, I would say, like December or January. It was quite a while before April Fool's. And it was me, our level designer, Chad Steingraber, and our art director, Vince. And we just kind of sat around and were shooting the shit and was like, what's cool? And then Chad pulled up a map on his computer, and he had been working on a moon map for no reason. And Vince was just like, let's just put a tank on it and play it. So the next day, Vince had a mock-up of what the tank looked like, and it pretty much was what you see on screen there. And then it went from just a concept to balancing its actual aspects, and Nick can speak to that more. But it was kind of an off-the-cuff conversation that just became something really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it came together very quickly, and it was very much just us, talking in the office. Andy was talking in his previous Q&A session where you guys were like, hey, have you ever thought about having buildings that explode or whatever? And he was saying, yeah, we talk about this stuff all the time. Well, this is one of the cases where we were just talking about stuff all the time, and then we're like, yeah, let's do it. And Vince turned around a new tank paint job in like a few hours, and Chad crunched for a couple hours, and we had a moon map. And then, maybe a couple weeks of balancing and testing this tank, we had what was the final product. The Chaffee in particular was chosen because of actually its physical proportions. It has a bit of a wider set. It's a lower profile, lower center of gravity. And this is actually good for the lower gravity scenario we have on the moon. We tried larger tanks initially, and they would just kind of flip over like an SUV as soon as you tried to turn or something. And it's kind of funny because you look at the actual lunar vehicles that NASA designed, and they're all with wide sets, big tires, and low centers of gravity. Even still, and if you play this mode, you know that you go flying in the Chaffee if you hit the slice bump, and it's really fun. But the problem was initially you would hit these bumps and go flying and hit the ground. And as you can expect, you explode, because that's what happens when a tank hits the ground, from like 100-foot fall. And it was cool the first time, but then it was like, this isn't fun. People are going to be jumping and doing these cool moves and exploding constantly. It's not going to be fun. So I begged our lead designer, we have to do something about this. And he was really certain there was nothing that we could do that was too low level in just the DNA of World of Tanks, that when you hit the ground hard, you explode. But I was persistent, and we did some digging, and we found exactly where that logic takes place, and we hacked it. There's a line in there that says, take damage unless you're the moon tank. It's very... If you know anything about programming, you try to write things that are very kind of general case. You don't, if this, if this, you kind of say, very general terms. But we did the opposite of that. We were very specific. And I think the experience was better off for it. A fun fact about the Lunar is originally in our first tests, it had a 30-round clip. I think we have a photo of that? Yeah.
It was pretty awesome.
It was amazing, and it was a lot faster. Too fast. And before you think, oh, that sounds cool, why'd you nerf it, Leo? It was too chaotic. You would just start driving, and before you knew it, you were skating and just Tokyo drifting around a rock, and you'd start tumbling and just shooting 30 rounds. And now imagine there's 30 of these tanks all doing the same thing. It was just insane. So we toned it back a little bit, especially since this debuted on the 360, and the 360 was actually like one of them was actually melting under the pressure of trying to like process all these laser blasts and tanks flying and moon physics. So we had to pull it back a little bit.
Yeah, we initially did an in-studio mock battle with the lunar tank, and it was a 30-player battle, and we were having so much fun flying through the air, but we didn't realize that the Xbox 360 was running at 8 frames per second.
Yeah.
So we had to tone it down. I think we ended up with 7-on-7 initially to kind of hit the sweet spot of what's still playable.
Yeah, yeah.
A fun fact about the Lunar, I remember hearing it from the meeting, was that the first time it launched, it was an April Fool's Day, and then it was relaunched to commemorate the moon landing. And the designers and everyone noticed that the lasers were different color, and it was because one of the engineers was like, "Oh yeah, we put green and red lasers, and we just never turned it on, but we'll turn it on for the second round." So
that was really weird because it's like things don't just change on their own, right? We had initially talked about with the first lunar event was that, oh, let's do it like Star Wars, like enemies always shoot red and you always shoot green. I think it's flipped in Star Wars, but anyway, you can tell which lasers are coming from where. And the complex thing about that is actually in World of Tanks, the type of tracers and lasers you get off of your shots is based on the shell type, and we can't. At the time, we couldn't load up like these shells belong in enemies and these shells belong in your tank, even though they're the exact same tank. But sometime between April Fools and July, one of our engineers took it upon himself and didn't tell anyone to put that feature in. So we were getting bugs from our quality assurance team saying like, the lasers are broken, they're shooting random colors, and nothing looks right. And
he's forever known as the gnome laser.
Yeah.
Adding secret content into the game. With the cool stuff that we also implemented, there's also been features that the design team has decided not to implement and why. I would love to know what those things are.
Sure, there was a mode that we were tossing around initially. Everyone liked the sheriff mode from PC, and we were throwing around the idea of giving players the possibility of becoming a sheriff. So if you killed the sheriff, now you'd be the new sheriff, and keeping that going throughout multiple matches. It's something that we've never done, and maybe we'll do at some point, but it was a really cool idea that just never made it.
Another one would be deathmatch. A lot of people always say, oh yeah, deathmatch would be a great idea, it'd be great. Not so much in reality. In normal gameplay, everyone has the two fronts. It's either, you got the south and the north, and they eventually collide. And so you can kind of get a feel of where your shots are going to be coming from. So we always expect it from the front. Well, the problem is when you have, 30 people randomly across the map, you're getting shot from every single angle. So everyone just starts at the corners, and then they kind of work their way in, but it just depends on which way someone turned. And then you have like 6 different shots coming from different directions, and you die very quickly. And it usually, what happened was the winner tended to be the guy who just stayed in the corner, waiting for everyone to die, and then came out. So it was kind of like a destruction derby almost, where the one guy is just like, I'm not going to play until everyone's dead, and I win. And then that's pretty much how it went. So that's not going to happen.
Richie, was there anything in the art that you guys wanted to do you never got around to?
Well, I mean, like, it was kind of touched on during like the previous presentation, but like, one of the things that we always try to look at going from the Xbox 360 to the Xbox One is making sure that since we do have the cross-platform play, to make sure that the two consoles play friendly with one another. So sometimes as we were doing some set dressing on the environments, we're adding in all these extra details, all these extra props, and then we realize it's like, we can't all add all of this extra stuff to the Xbox One because, you're adding it in places where it affects gameplay, and it's not there on the 360 as well. So a lot of times we had to make sure that it's like, if we're adding something on the Xbox One, it also has to play well with the physics volumes and the collision that is established on the 360. So it's a fine line. You kind of do some set dressing to make stuff look prettier, but then you also have to make sure that it plays well with the other stuff. Yeah,
that's so that you don't have someone hiding behind a rock on Xbox One, and then on the Xbox 360 they're just sitting out in an open field like an idiot. But speaking of environment, like features that got talked about but didn't go in, something that a lot of players thought about and something that we thought about a lot internally was as soon as we put in the weather system, we thought obviously, heavy rain or heavy fog or inclement, kind of driving conditions, that should affect your performance, right? It should affect your vision range. It should affect your traction. And the feature got really far. I think we might have actually implemented it and tested it out. And we had like heads-up display, like infographics, like being worked on to like let you know that this is happening, kind of like Weather Channel, like your 5-day forecast, that kind of thing. And it turns out it is not fun to not be able to see anyone because it's foggy, or slide down a ravine because it's rainy and your traction is bad. So that's one of those features where you have to kind of call the line between realistic and fun, gameplay.
Yeah,
That's
it worked better on
interesting.
paper.
Yeah, it looked better on paper for sure.
And that was a feature that got pulled like in the last week of production before we launched a patch. So we're definitely not afraid of trying new things and realizing when we've made mistakes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting that you mentioned, you said it several times, that it's fun, because all of you get to test the game, and then if it's not fun, you definitely consider pulling all that information out.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we want to make sure we keep the game fun. One of the things also that we do within the studio, and I'm sure you've met Lady O, who's at the checking table. She's fantastic. Is also leverage all the feedback from the community. A lot of the features that are in game right now, it is because of the comments and suggestions that all of you tankers send us via the forums, Twitter, Facebook. And we definitely hear you, and we want to make sure that we process that into the game. But as a developer, as a designer, as an artist, as a technical designer, how do you leverage the information that the players give you, and then it comes out in the game?
I think mostly it's thanks to people like Val and Arlette herself that read the forums every day, talk to you guys, and kind of filter down the feedback to us. We receive a report at the end of the day, every day, talking about hot topics and different trends and what we want to act on next. Something that I'm really proud of is that we respond to disabled gamers very quickly and with great importance. For instance, if we have colorblind gamers that say, oh, I can't read this number because it's red, we'll make it a priority to fix it. Or we introduced a blinking mechanism to the attention to the sector feature.
Yeah.
And we had epileptic people saying that, oh, that was making it, they could no longer play because they were having some kind of reaction to it.
That was my fault, I'm sorry.
But we fixed it right away, and it's great that we work for a company that puts that as a high priority.
It also helps us gauge issues in the community. Say a tank's overpowered or underpowered. It's like usually a canary in the coal mine where it gives us an idea of where to look. Everything you see on the forums necessarily isn't always true, because sometimes people will call out tanks, maybe they had a bad day, or maybe they just got a wrong case of many games losing to the same tank. But it gives us an idea of what to look at. Like situations kind of like, here's one, the Waffentrager E100. Many people despise it, but when you look at the actual numbers and the breakdown, because we collect all the data of every single match, of every single player, of every single day, so we know how much damage, how much spotting, how much experience, everything that goes along with the tank, how much they win, lose, everything. And the crazy thing about that tank is it's very like 50-50 balance of win-lose. And we try to keep all our tanks somewhere around there where it's not too good, it's not too bad, but we just keep it right. But it gives us points where we can look at tanks where they're underperforming. Like, a couple patches ago, there were a number of low-level UK tanks like the cruisers, and they were just getting destroyed. But the difference between maybe 15 millimeters of armor made a gigantic difference, but it helps us look at tanks that we can adjust to make them better, or if they need a nerf. Usually we don't try to do that. We try to make everything better so it's comparable instead of just taking away everything. And then other situations, we'll get suggestions from the forums for packages or new layouts, and if it's within reason, we will implement those. But if not, like not every combo will work on the tank. We won't do those, but when we can, we will. So.
Yeah, using like some of the data that we're able to pull in, combined with the community feedback, and on top of that, our regular updates, it's really kind of cool that we have this kind of we provide that to the fans, and that we are listening to you guys, and that we're able to kind of update and make these changes on a pretty regular basis. I remember even some things where it's just like, I think like a map like Province, where it's just like, oh, people starting at this base seem to have an advantage just looking at the feedback, looking at the data we collected, and then we did some internal play testing. It's like, well, what if we do something as simple as shifting the base location or the capture point, and doing like little details like that, and listening to the feedback was enough to kind of balance out the map again. And it's just like, okay, cool, the map is fun again.
Yeah, I'll say it since our friend Chad, the level designer, isn't here. A lot of you may notice that between matches or updates that your spawn points will be constantly moving around. And that's usually him just trying to adjust the maps to meet the optimal 50-50 balance for the game. I don't know if any of you remember, what is it? Malinovka Assault. It used to be very horrible. And I liked the map even then, but it was very horrible. The balance was something like, I want to say 70-30. So the defenders usually had the huge advantage. And over time, he eventually got it down to pretty much 49-51, or just around 50-50. And so after a number of iterations, he can look at the heat maps, for people's complaints or where they say they're dying a lot, look at the map and then adjust it ever so slightly and then eventually improve upon it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you guys realize just like how much data we're collecting on you. I mean, we are watching you. I mean, we have just mountains of information about like, well, this person shot this person and they died, and then like just maps of like every kill overlaid, and it kind of like creates this Picasso like piece of art that can tell us like, oh, well, we should move the base, the starting base, like 50 meters to the left, and then all of a sudden the map is balanced. It's crazy. We know like how long you're hanging out in the options menu before you click on something. I probably shouldn't mention this, but there is a limit on how many unassigned crews you can have. You know, if you reassign a crew, it kicks the other crew out and they're unassigned. There's a limit on there, obviously. But it's a huge number. I won't say what that number is, but it's a huge number. And there are 3 people out there that have hit that number. I don't know what they're doing. They're just sitting there all day, every day, assigning and reassigning crews. And so they have X number of unassigned crews. And we have like a log saying, this person has run out of crews, this person has run out of crews. So we are paying attention. And we watch the forums like pretty much every day. We have people like Arlette just trolling the forums all the time.
Yep.
And I mean, your comments are invaluable. They are extremely valuable to our team, and sometimes direct forum posts will go into like our bug and feature logging tool. They'll be like, Spicy Cat 299 thinks there should be a rear view camera. You know, it's just like we are absolutely listening to you, and you're never falling on deaf ears.
You guys are like Santa Claus. They know when you're sleeping and they know when you're awake, so that's kind of scary.
I was thinking more like Big Brother. So.
Yeah, no, we're like a friendly Santa Claus, Big Brother, watching you.
So you're breaking into people's houses in the middle of the night and steal their food?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys. It's been a wonderful presentation. I think we're going to open the floor for questions, and I already see hands up in the air. So, gentlemen with the gray shirt closer to us.
So your question, and correct me if I'm wrong, is how the matchmaker decides how to put people together, and if we modify it or if we just go with what's there. Oh no, we totally look at it in passes. Every release we get reports of tanks that should be ranked higher or lower. It's based off battle tier just like PC is, but we kind of truncated. I think we took out battle tier 11 and 12.
Yeah, 11 and 12 is gone.
So that it's just based from 1 to 10. Leo can speak to some modifications we made specifically.
So for the matchmaker, we've done a number of adjustments between the PC. So normally what would happen is when you buy a tank, you usually have one match where you're the top tier tank. And so that's to try and help people get a start on their new match or their new tank and start getting used to it. Well, what we've done since then is we've increased the number of initial battles where you will be that top tier tank. So we have a better chance of actually winning and do well in those matches as opposed to just getting thrown out and being the bottom guy in the bottom tier. But as far as matchmaker is concerned, each tank has their own little weighting system. So it depends on the tank class, the size of the gun, their health, And so we don't try to go too crazy with it. Like we try to monitor it all the time because there's so many permutations with inside of it that tries to make hundreds of people and try to get you into the best optimized match. Because not only is it matching your tanks between the tiers for your battle, but it's trying to figure out what map to choose, what maps have most of the players played recently, and it's just trying to work that all in and then smash it to get you somewhere. Actually, we still are looking at something like that, but the main thing to think is we try to keep the whole population, not so just you particularly, but just the whole population to keep around 50-50. We just try to keep everything fair and balanced. Like we don't want too many people getting like 60% win rate or too low of 40%. So we try to keep everything balanced in a way to keep everyone together. Because the way it works out is you always want to feel really good about your game. So you need someone to shoot at. So you don't want to be like, he's a pro player. And so it gets a little complicated, but we are looking into that. It's just difficult to find the data, well, not data, to store the data of their skill, then throw that into the already insanely complex matchmaker, and then try to get that all working. But
we have tried to decrease the kind of combination of fail platoons as well. Like we've constrained it so that you can't bring in a T1 in a tier 10 battle, for instance. So we're trying to bring everybody up to a more even level playing field, but as stuff as like, if you've lost 3 matches in a row, maybe we give you preferential matchmaking after the fact. That's stuff that we want to do but haven't done yet.
Yeah, there's definitely measures in place that are currently there. Stuff like for your first 20 matches, like you're a brand new player, for your first 20 matches, you only matchmake with other new players in kind of like a 7-on-7 scenario. We are looking at additional measures to not just make the matchmaker kind of fix the things, but also remedy the situation at the start by improving new players' knowledge of the game and how to play. So kind of instead of treating the symptom, like actually heal the disease. So that's something we're looking at a lot right now, for sure.
Gentleman, right in between the the one that's like me, yes.
Just to repeat the question, it was whether or not the weather changes would make it to PC. And it's kind of been a friendly rivalry between us and them. I've been to some of the conventions and talked to their developers, and they're like, "Oh, you guys got it out before we did," which is something we're proud of, but we want them to get it too. So it's something they are working on. It's up to them when it comes out.
And again, I mean, like to hit on what Andy talked about before, we do have an advantage. We know exactly what hardware our end user is using. We can cater to that much easier. The PC guys are catering to a large audience, a large PC audience, a large Eastern European PC audience especially, and hardware there kind of lags behind in some respects. So there's certain things that we're able to do that they're still working on.
I think another thing that kind of helps us is a lot of people on the team have known each other for a very long time now. So if there's an idea like a weather variant or war variant or visibility from weather, it's easy enough to kind of bounce ideas off one another and be like, hey, let's try to prototype this. And we could kind of see like very quickly whether it's going to work or whether it's gaining some traction. So.
Right, we discovered quite the same thing, and we just decided that the weather effects shouldn't affect gameplay. Maybe that's an advantage of having being on a console that people are a little bit more geared towards arcade-like gameplay. I
do think that's something that, at least me personally, I've always been kind of more of a console player as opposed to a PC one, and I think the way we've ported our game over to both the 360 and now the Xbox One, it lends itself really well to the console player sensibilities.
Thank you. Gentleman all the way at the back with a white shirt standing. What programs do they use for art assets? Programming languages.
It kind of depends on what you're doing. I know on the HUD side, it's mostly ActionScript 3. On the game side, it's Lua. The engine's in C++. But we also, on the back end and server side, we have people doing stuff in Python. So it really depends on what you want to do. But once you become extremely proficient in one language, it's not too hard to bounce around and learn other ones. So it's kind of whatever is needed. So the question was, either cross-play between PC and Xbox or transferring your account from PC to Xbox. Correct? And it comes down to our game is kind of its own beast. Our economy is very different, our balance is very different, so we didn't want to give an advantage to people coming either from the console to PC or from PC to console. So we kind of wanted the freedom to continue doing what we thought was best for our game. So it just comes down to making it the most fair for our existing players on the 360. So probably not going to happen in the future. It's something we've discussed, but it's unlikely.
Also, I know your pain. I have a number of tier 10s on PC, and I had to get them all again.
Yeah, totally. The question was whether or not we'd be adding a custom game type, like custom matches. And we have something already called team training, which we added, like 3-4 months ago. And you can take your friends into a battle and just kind of fart around and explore the map.
Oh, customize your maps.
Low gravity or whatever, like crazy stuff. Well, not really, not yet.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to do because everything is run off the server. So if it doesn't have that data right now, it's a lot of work to get that data inside of the server. So it's all, you get certain choices, but right now we don't have the ability to do any of that yet.
It's a good idea, though.
Leo, you want to take this one?
all
I
right.
think you got this.
Part of it's game, so it's just more gaming aspect. A lot of it has to do with history, actually. We have a lot of great tank historians who go around the world and get data on tanks, figure out how thick the armor is at certain sections, the angle of the armor. Then they take a lot of the data from the ballistics. That's one of the things that is kind of crazy but amazing at the same time. Our company was founded by very smart people who were actual scientists, nuclear engineers, physicists. The math is insane that is involved in this game. So you may look at the models of the tanks and you're like, oh, that's really pretty. But the thing is, when you look inside of the tanks, there's actual bounding volumes and physics volumes of where the tank commander would sit, the radio man, you have the engine positions, everything inside of the tank is actually there. So it's all calculated based on the actual physics of a shell flying through the air, the shell normalization. It's a lot of work from a lot of people, but
It really is phenomenally complex,
Yeah.
you know, and that's part of the reason why sometimes we have difficulty as game designers communicating something to you. For example, sometimes we wish we could communicate stuff like vision range and whether or not you're going to be detected and some of like kind of the vision sensitivities and you were talking about like, well, this radio could produce this historically, you know, and this guy can see out of the commander's hatch, you know, this well, and on this tank, well, you know, the back, you know, stuck out so far, and there's this bush, and we're doing actual physics calculations with like the sight lines to the bush. So if it ever seems like we're having trouble communicating something to you, it's because of just how complex and how rooted in like physical interaction the game actually is.
We have a tool that you can kind of throw shells at tanks, and all the values are in real millimeters to see what the results are.
Yeah.
So that really helps us balance them.
I'm glad I'm not in your position. I'm dyslexic. I can't math. There's no way. Gentleman up here.
So the question was, you like the PC Garage and how it's clickable, and whether or not we can bring a armor viewer or something along those lines to either the PC or 360. It's something that's been on our list to do for a very, very long time, and it's just come down to kind of priorities. We concentrated so hard on the Xbox One that feature just kept on being pushed off and pushed off. But we're not taking it off the list of stuff we want to do. So the answer is soon, but unknown.
Yeah, it's still on the list because that's one of the things I put in there a long time ago. Is because for me, I started on PC and I played forever and ever. I learned everything about every tank. And then when we actually got acquired, I started working on every tank. So I know the balancing on every tank. I know the weaknesses. Like I can look at a distance, see that outline of a tank, and know exactly what it is without even seeing the name of it. But the thing is, most people do not remember these things, or they haven't played enough to know them. So what we wanted to do is just get an armor viewer, so where you can just take a look at a tank and get an idea of where to aim, like where's the armor the weakest, what weak points are there, like is there a gun port or the commander's hatch, or is there a fuel tank or an ammo rack right behind this certain specific piece of armor. So we want to try and teach players more without getting overly complicated where they're just lost and just look at a bunch of numbers and just eyes glaze over. So we're trying to bring more features like that where players can understand more about the game, and then, yeah, so they can try to get a little better.
Oh, what about the German destroyer? The new
German tank destroyer. When's North America getting it?
when is North America getting it? And
It'll
Leo's
be a
answer was a
while.
smile.
It'll be a while. Oh, this is, or I'll let you repeat that, and then I'll answer.
I can't repeat it now because now I'm looking at
Okay.
you.
A lot of it had to do was, what do we think about like nerfing things like Artie, and is there a point where we've gone too far, or do we keep going away from historical accuracy? I have to say, in regards to Artie's, it's definitely not historically accurate. For just to start, we try to keep it so at least it's enjoyable and fun to actually play. And along those lines, where everyone keeps repeating nerf Artie, nerf Artie, nerf Artie, I just tell you spend some time in Artie, because I have a number of high-tiered Arties, and it takes a while to hit a tank. I'm sorry. Because it could take, I don't know, I want to say like 10 seconds just to get the aim right. And if that tank moved any time between then, you're out of luck. And I want to say the majority of time it's going to be a miss. And then you have to wait another 45 seconds to reload and repeat this over and over. So for the people who always scream Nerf Artie, they get the one random shot where they get destroyed in one hit or get really hit hard.
Yeah.
But it's not that common. So I want to say Artie it's a tough thing to play. So yeah.
I do believe there's a fair element of psychology to it, just like kind of a psychological factor.
Yeah.
That how sudden it is that you just explode. But I mean, if you have sixth sense and you're in a field and you haven't moved recently and you see that there's Arties on the other team and then you explode and you feel like the game is unfair, maybe. Yeah.
And when we brought World of Tanks to console, there was a discussion whether or not we should include artillery at all. And it came down to yes, we should. There's a core set of our players that's the only thing they do and they enjoy it, so they should continue to enjoy it. But I think it's a bigger discussion what we can do to give feedback to the people being aimed at, to give them information whether or not they can move, whether that's like enforcing it through voiceovers or your crew talking to you. There's other solutions there beyond just Nerf Artie. Then the other half of that question was how far we can kind of deviate from PC, which was it's kind of very much our own game. We can deviate as far as we want, as far as we feel is appropriate.
I do like the voiceover idea. It's just like, hey, dude, shouldn't we move? We've been here for 5 minutes now. We should get going.
So the question was, why is the console version, Xbox 360, Xbox One, so different from PC? And you really hit on it. Part of it is at least that the audience is different. PC audience has a different expectation, a set of kind of ideas in their head about how a game is going to play than a console audience has. But there's also a physical element to this as well. A PC player is usually sitting, a foot and a half from their screen or 2 feet from their screen. A console player is, on the couch generally, 10 feet from the screen. And that affects a lot of stuff as well. I mean, in terms of like the heads-up display, we have to make things bigger and use less text. We don't have a cursor that you can mouse over things and get hints, But I think the expectation thing really plays into a lot about why our game tends to be a little bit more arcadey, because console games tend to be a little bit more run and gun. We don't want to go that direction at all, like entirely, because it's World of Tanks. It's not a run and gun Rambo type of experience. But we do, tilt just a little bit more that way,
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Even on the art side, there's just like little things that, what are certain console sensibilities that we could add to the experience, and like something as simple as the visual effects. Okay, let's really Hollywoodize the explosions, the smoke and fire, and it's a small change, but it's enough that like some of the console players are just expecting little things like that.
I was going to just speak real quick to the tanks. As far as the data is concerned, they're not that drastically different from their PC counterparts. The only real main differences are for balancing aspects, where we get a little more data and we can fine-tune specific things. And on the other side of that is a lot of it's perception with the tanks, because we have different cameras with different fields of view, so it feels very different, but it's actuality, the data is not that far apart.
So the question was whether or not other pieces of armor, like spaced armor, could be blown off similar to the turret. And it's something that Andy kind of touched on during his talk. Is that yes, it's something we're looking into. It's not something that we're actively like putting a lot of effort into, but if we could have some kind of interactivity with other pieces of the tank being blown off, that would be something that would be really cool.
The other part of that is we have to be careful about how crazy we get with it, because everything is its own entity on the server. So every time you blow off that turret, the server keeps track of exactly where that turret is. So anyone who interacts with it knows exactly where it is. So the problem is we don't want to overload the servers too much with too many things moving around, but that is a valid thing that we could potentially do in the future.
Yeah, and we even have things already. I mean, this isn't entirely interactive. It's mostly just for the individual clients, but we do have things on the tanks that we call wiggly bits, like antenna and things that aren't bolted down that kind of like sway and go with the actual physics of the tank. So we're always looking at new ways that we can make those tanks look really cool, really realistic, you know, and you know, popping the turret off was one of those ways, and it happened to have actual kind of gameplay impact, which is really cool. And maybe we'll look at more stuff in the future.
We've also looked at weakening armor, like hitting the same spot twice.
Yeah.
But it really hasn't gotten past the point of just having the conversation because we don't know the gameplay implications for it yet.
Well, thank you so much, guys. Thank you for your time, and not just the panelists here, but our previous panelists.